When the descent capsule's hatch hissed open, 10 alien cadets were already scrambling for advanced shelters, everyone except Elena Navarro, with her primitive gear. As the electromagnetic storm fried every piece of high-tech equipment, the cosmos witnessed something unprecedented: ice that burned. In the yawning cold of Kale 7's eternal night, the survival of an entire group rested on one human's discovery. Kale 7 was a frozen hell of a world, locked in a 500-hour polar night with temperatures plunging below 200 degrees C. The Galactic Academy had chosen this lifeless terrain specifically for its magnetic storms and unforgiving climate. This was the pinnacle of their survival training program: 5 Kalion cycles, roughly 500 Earth hours of darkness, in an environment designed to break even the best cadets. Elena Navarro adjusted her analog survival suit as she stepped out of the descent pod. She'd heard the whispers from her alien classmates as they'd prepared for deployment. They thought she was a joke, a primitive human relying on outdated technology instead of the cutting-edge adaptive membranes and AI feedback systems the others wore with such pride. Deploying heat shield in 3, 2. A tall, blue-skinned Dermorian cadet named Lars announced to no one in particular, making sure Elena heard him. His metallic armor glimmered with embedded sensors, adapting in real time to the atmospheric conditions. Beside him, the others checked their equipment with fluid, practiced motions. 10 elite graduates from the best planetary academies in the galaxy. Elena tasted the metallic tang of Kale 7's thin air and looked up at the swirling violet clouds above the stratosphere. Their beauty belied the deadly electromagnetic currents flowing through them. "You might want to reconsider your approach," said a willowy Teloric with glass-like skin and visible blue veins beneath her translucent epidermis. Her name was M, just M, and her tone was a practiced mix of concern and condescension. Elena tightened the straps on her pack, testing the strength of her analog barometer. "I've got what I need," she replied simply. Commander Sorik's drone hovered overhead, its metallic voice piercing the whipping wind. "Attention, cadets. Evan's long night begins in approximately 43 minutes. No cadet has survived more than 48 hours in these conditions. Your primary objective is to survive all 500 hours until extraction. Deployment complete. Construct shelters now." Elena watched as the alien cadets scattered like startled insects, racing to claim the most strategic positions on the icy plateau. They moved with purpose and precision, each deploying automated shelter systems designed to withstand the harshest environments. Her gaze lingered on the horizon, where the light was already beginning to fade. "Evan's long night," she muttered. The legendary electromagnetic storm had claimed 12 lives during the first Academy expedition 60 years ago. Only Lieutenant Evans had survived, and even he had suffered severe nerve damage. Elena turned away from the others and began her trek toward a volcanic formation she'd spotted during descent. The thermal readings suggested dormant heat sources beneath the surface, perhaps enough to create a natural shelter. As she walked, her boots crunched against something that wasn't quite ice. She paused, kneeling to examine the crystalline formation. It fractured uniquely, with internal striations she'd never seen in normal ice. Curious. She slipped a shard into her collection pouch before continuing. The first howl came without warning, a sonic rip that tore through the atmosphere, sending ripples of electromagnetic disturbance across the plateau. Elena instinctively covered her analog chronometer with her hand, a futile gesture of protection. In the distance, she heard the first screams of panic. A shelter dome flickered and died, then another, and another. "System failure! My core is fried!" "Backup generators unresponsive. Emergency protocols offline." One by one, every piece of advanced technology on Kale 7's surface went dark. Elena watched as the sleek shelter domes collapsed like punctured lungs. The adaptive armor systems froze in place, and the communication arrays fell silent. The alien cadets stood helpless, suddenly stripped of every advantage they'd relied upon. Elena ducked into her volcanic cave, just as the darkness fell complete. Evan's long night had begun, and she was the only one still fully operational. With methodical calm, Elena unpacked her gear in the relative shelter of the cave. The rock walls were porous basalt, offering minimal but crucial insulation against the dropping temperatures. She arranged her analog tools carefully: spark generator, pressure cooker, wind-up chronometer, manual oxygen regulator. Nothing electronic, nothing that could be compromised by the electromagnetic storm. The temperature was falling rapidly. Already her breath crystallized in front of her face, small puffs of white that hung in the air before dissipating. She needed a heat source immediately. Elena removed the strange ice crystal she'd collected earlier. It felt different in her hand, denser than normal ice, with a faint lavender tinge when held up to her headlamp. She brought it close to her face, breathing on it experimentally. The crystal hissed. Elena jerked back, surprised. The spot where her warm breath had touched the crystal had momentarily glowed, a brief spark that vanished almost instantly. It hadn't melted or sublimated as normal ice would. "That's not standard H2O," she muttered, her mind racing through possibilities. "Methane hydrate? No. Wrong color. Nitrogen compound?" She reached for her spark generator, a simple, hand-cranked device designed to create friction and spark. Positioning the crystal on a flat stone, she cranked the generator until a bright spark leapt to the crystal's surface. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The crystal ignited with a violent flash of violet flame that lasted 3 seconds before extinguishing. The heat output was significant, enough to warm her hands momentarily. "Holy," Elena whispered, staring at the blackened remnant of the crystal. "It burns." A shuffling sound at the cave entrance pulled her attention away. A hulking figure staggered in, collapsed against the wall, and wheezed painfully. Elena recognized the Alari reptilian, Verkon, his scaled skin now dulled by extreme cold. His state-of-the-art thermal armor frozen solid around his massive frame. Can't move," he gasped, his usually intimidating voice reduced to a desperate whisper. "Suit locked up. Can't regulate temperature." Elena assessed his condition quickly. Alari were cold-blooded. Without his suit's heating systems, Verkon would be dead within an hour. She made her decision immediately. "I need ice crystals," she told him. "Specific ones with internal fractures, like this." She showed him a remaining shard. "Can you identify them?" Verkon's slitted eyes focused on the crystal, then on Elena. Why?" "Because they burn," she said simply. It took 30 minutes to gather enough crystals for the first proper attempt. Verkon, freed from his locked armor with Elena's help, moved sluggishly, but deliberately, his natural sense for minerals proving invaluable. He brought back 15 crystals with the exact internal structure Elena had specified. By that time, 2 more cadets had found their way to the cave, the Euro twins, insectoid siblings whose 6 limbs now trembled uncontrollably in the cold. They huddled together near the entrance, their compound eyes watching Elena's every move. "What's she doing?" one whispered to the other. Their voices were identical, impossible to distinguish. "Building something," the other replied. Elena arranged the crystals in a shallow pit she'd dug in the cave floor, stacking them in a circular pattern with smaller fragments in the center. She partially covered the arrangement with flat stones, regulating potential airflow. Then, she positioned her spark generator and began to crank. The first attempts produced only brief flashes, momentary bursts of heat followed by darkness. Elena adjusted the oxygen flow, rearranged the crystals, and tried again. On the 7th attempt, something changed. The violet flame stabilized, flickering but holding steady. A sustained burn. Elena continued cranking until sweat beaded on her forehead despite the freezing air. The flame grew stronger, emanating precious heat that reached even the shivering Eurotwins at the entrance. 12 minutes, Elena announced, checking her chronometer as the last crystal finally burned out. 12 minutes of heat from one batch. Verkan had regained enough mobility to move closer to the pit. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice stronger now. Elena met his gaze. "I didn't. I observed. I tested. I adjusted." Word spread quickly. Within hours, 4 more cadets had made their way to Elena's cave. A snake-bodied cadet named Kira, who slithered in silently and coiled in a corner. A pair of photosynthians whose leaf-like appendages had begun to blacken with frost. And finally, Mem, the telluric glass skin, who entered with a respectful nod toward Elena. "The human makes fire," Em announced, as if confirming a rumor. Elena was already organizing a system. "We need more crystals," she told them. "Specific ones. Verkan will show you what to look for. We need to establish a perimeter, too. This cave isn't large enough for all 10 cadets." 11, Verkan corrected. "Plus you." Elena shook her head. 10. Kells hasn't shown up. The vulnerate brute was the strongest of all the cadets, and the most aggressive. His absence was notable. With each passing hour, Elena refined her technique. The Eurotwins organized the crystal storage, carefully dusting each shard with mineral powder from the cave walls to stabilize the burns. Verkan took up position at the entrance, his imposing form serving as both gatekeeper and guard. Kira's serpentine body proved perfect for accessing narrow crevices where crystals might be hidden. Elena noticed M watching her closely, recording notes about each burn, duration, heat output, airflow variables. There was something calculating in those transparent eyes. By the 3rd day, Elena had established a working rhythm. 20-minute burns every 4 hours, using 3 to 5 crystals per cycle. The cave now housed 8 cadets, all dependent on her controlled fires for survival. The hierarchy was clear. Elena made the decisions. Verkan enforced them, and the others contributed according to their abilities. But their crystal supply was dwindling, and they needed to venture further to find more. "There's a glacial trench about 2 kilometers east," Elena explained, pointing to her hand-drawn map. The scanner readings before landing showed deeper crystal formations there. "I'll go with you," Verkan offered immediately. Elena shook her head. "You need to stay here. Keep the others in line." She glanced at M, who had been questioning the burn ratios under her breath. "I'll go alone. I move faster that way." The glacial trench was a gash in Kale 7's surface, a wound that plunged into darkness. Elena descended carefully, using ice picks and rope to navigate the steep walls. The cold here was even more intense, if that was possible. A bone-deep chill that sought to freeze the marrow itself. At the bottom, Elena found what she was seeking, a vein of high-energy fire glass, as the cadets had begun calling it. These crystals were larger, with more complex internal structures. They would burn longer, hotter. She was filling her pack when she heard the crunch of footsteps on ice. Elena turned slowly, already knowing what she would find. Kells towered over her, his vulnerate frame nearly twice her size. 6 eyes blinked in sequence along his ridge-like forehead. His massive hands were empty, but that meant little. Vulnerids could crush a human skull with minimal effort. "Give me the crystals," he said without preamble. His voice was surprisingly gentle, at odds with his intimidating appearance. Elena kept her own voice steady. "There are enough for everyone at the cave. We have a system." "I'm not going to your cave," Kells replied. "I'm not going to follow your rules or wait for your permission to stay warm." He took a step forward. "The crystals. Now." Elena had anticipated this possibility. She'd known that eventually. Someone would decide that violence was a more expedient path to survival than cooperation. She'd prepared accordingly. "Last chance," she said quietly. "We can work together." Kells lunged forward with surprising speed. Elena ducked and rolled, feeling the wind of his massive fist as it passed where her head had been. She scrambled backward, reaching for her pack. Kells advanced, his 6 eyes tracking her movements with predatory focus. "I don't need you. I just need what you've found." Elena's hand closed around her crowbar. A simple tool, but heavy and solid. As Kells charged again, she pivoted and struck with all her strength at his knee joint. The crack was sickeningly loud in the confined space of the trench. Kells howled, stumbling as his leg gave way beneath him. Elena didn't wait to see if he'd recover. She snatched her pack and scrambled up the trench wall, her fingers finding purchase on the icy surface through sheer desperation. Halfway up, she heard Kells moving below. He was following, injured but determined. Elena climbed faster, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Near the top, she paused, looking back down at her pursuer. Then, she jammed her ice pick into a precarious shelf of ice and pulled. The resulting cascade was smaller than she'd hoped, but sufficient. A shower of ice and rock tumbled down, striking Kells and knocking him back to the bottom of the trench. He wouldn't die. Vulnerids were incredibly resilient. But he wouldn't be following her either. Elena returned to the cave with a bleeding gash on her arm and fewer crystals than she'd hoped. Verkan took one look at her and understood. "Kells," he asked simply. Elena nodded, unsealing her pack to reveal the precious fireglass. "We need to secure the entrance. Make it smaller, defensible." By the next burn cycle, the cave entrance had been narrowed to a crawl space barely large enough for the largest cadets to squeeze through. Verkan positioned himself there permanently, screening each entrant, turning away those who came too late or offered nothing of value to the group. Inside, tensions simmered beneath the surface of cooperation. Some cadets, like Verkan and the Euro twins, had fully accepted Elena's leadership. Others maintained a quiet resentment, a simmering anger at having to depend on a primitive human for survival. M, in particular, had grown increasingly analytical of Elena's methods. She shadowed Elena during preparation, watching her arrange the crystals, questioning the timing, the spacing, the oxygen flow. "You waste potential energy," M said, on the 4th night, her voice precise and clinical. "I've been measuring burn rates against output. A 12-minute cycle would conserve crystals and still provide adequate thermal radiation." Elena continued arranging the pit for the next burn. 12 minutes is unstable. The reaction needs 20 minutes to avoid volatility." M produced a pointed crystal shard, holding it up to the dim light. "I've refined the core structure. 12 minutes is optimal. I can demonstrate." The cave had gone silent, all eyes focused on the confrontation. Elena met M's transparent gaze, recognizing the challenge for what it was, not just about burn duration, but about authority, about control. "If you're wrong," Elena said quietly, "you risk all of us." "If I'm right," M countered, "we extend our survival by 40% with the remaining crystal supply." Elena stepped back from the pit. "Show us then." M moved forward with confident precision, arranging the crystals according to her calculations. Her glass-like fingers worked deftly, adjusting each shard to specific angles. She glanced at Elena once, a hint of triumph in her transparent features. "Observe," M announced to the watching cadets. She activated the spark generator with practiced ease, sending the initial charge into her carefully arranged crystals. For 8 seconds, the burn progressed normally. Violet flames licked upward, casting eerie shadows against the cave walls. M turned to Elena, her expression vindicated. Then the crystalline structure destabilized. The explosion wasn't large, but in the confined space of the cave, it was devastating. A burst of violet flame erupted from the pit, accompanied by shards of superheated crystal. M took the brunt of the blast, her glass-like face melting partially along one side, blue fluid seeping from the wounds. Cadets scrambled backward, shouting in panic. Smoke filled the cave, acrid and choking. In the chaos, Elena moved forward calmly, kicking dirt over the remaining crystals to smother the uncontrolled reaction. When the smoke cleared, M lay on the ground, her face a partially melted ruin. The other cadets pressed against the far wall, staring in horror at both M and the blackened pit. Elena said nothing. She simply cleaned up the debris, retrieved fresh crystals from their dwindling supply, and prepared a new pit. She arranged the shards according to her original pattern, activated the spark generator, and created a perfect, stable, 20-minute burn. As warmth gradually returned to the cave, the cadets' fear subsided. One by one, they moved closer to the fire. No one questioned Elena's methods again. M survived, though her face would never fully recover. Elena treated her wounds with a paste made from cave minerals, stopping the worst of the melting. When M finally regained consciousness, she looked at Elena with her one remaining clear eye. "The fire did," she whispered, answering an unasked question. "Not you." It was as close to an apology as she would offer. By the fifth night, their situation had grown critical. Only 4 viable crystals remained, enough for perhaps one more proper burn. Elena gathered the cadets, her expression grim. "We need to ration more severely," she began. Before she could continue, a low rumble shook the cave, dislodging small stones from the ceiling. The cadets looked up in alarm. "What was that?" one of the Euro twins asked, antennae quivering. Elena had been tracking the subtle shifts in the cave structure after each burn. The realization had been building gradually, but now certainty crystallized in her mind. "The fireglass burns," she explained. "They're affecting local tectonic stability. The methane hydrate combustion is triggering microquakes." As if to confirm her assessment, a stronger tremor shook the cave. A section of the reinforced entrance collapsed inward, sending a rush of icy air and snow into their shelter. The barricade Virkon had so carefully constructed was failing. "We need to move," Elena announced, her decision immediate and final. "This location is compromised. We'll head for the eastern ridge. There's a shielded glacial trench there, according to the descent scans." "In this cold?" Kira hissed, her serpentine body coiling tighter. "We'll freeze before we make it halfway." Elena looked at their remaining crystals. "We have one final burn. 20 minutes of heat to prepare. Then we move together." No one argued. They had followed her this far. They would follow her now. Elena arranged their last crystals in the pit, creating what she privately thought of as their farewell flame. As the violet fire ignited, she distributed their remaining supplies, assigning roles for the journey. "Virkon, you'll lead. Your night vision is best. Euro twins, you'll support each other in the middle. Kira, your body temperature drops fastest. Stay between the photosynthians. They still radiate minimal heat. M, you're with me at the rear." The 20 minutes passed too quickly. As the last crystal burned out, Elena stamped out the embers and nodded to Virkon. It was time. They emerged into a world of howling darkness. The temperature had dropped even further during their days in the cave, and the wind cut like molecular blades against exposed skin. Elena had improvised coverings for everyone from thermal blankets and cave lichen, but it provided minimal protection at best. Virkon forged ahead, his massive form breaking through ice dunes and creating a partial windbreak for those behind him. The Euro twins moved in perfect synchronization, their 6 limbs bracing against each other for stability. Kira struggled most, her reptilian biology requiring heat that no longer existed. Their progress was agonizingly slow. Each step required conscious effort. Each meter gained a victory against the planet itself. Twice, they nearly lost cadets to the cold, First one of the photosynthians, whose leaf appendages had gone completely black. Then M, whose injuries had weakened her beyond what she would admit. Elena found herself supporting M, the Teloric's surprising weight, leaning heavily against her side. "Leave me!" M gasped at one point, her words barely audible over the wind. "I miscalculated." "Nobody gets left," Elena replied, adjusting her grip and pressing forward. The ridge seemed impossibly distant, a darker shadow against the black horizon. Elena's chronometer had frozen. Time became meaningless, measured only in painful breaths and faltering steps. Her own hands had lost feeling hours ago. She moved by memory and determination alone. Then Verkon, still in the lead, let out a shout that was instantly swallowed by the wind. He pointed urgently toward the horizon, where a silver flicker had appeared, too regular to be natural, too persistent to be illusion. The rescue beacon, Elena realized. "It's activated early." A wave of hope surged through the group. The photosynthian, who had been failing, suddenly straightened. Kira's movements became more fluid. Even M seemed to find new strength. They crested the ridge together, 8 survivors against impossible odds, and saw the unmistakable lights of a shuttle descending through Kale 7's toxic atmosphere. Elena collapsed to her knees, exhaustion finally claiming its due. Verkon was at her side instantly, his scaled hand gentle as he helped her stand. "We made it," he said, his voice filled with something that might have been respect, or even awe. The shuttle touched down 300 meters away, its landing lights cutting through the darkness like divine intervention. Med drones swarmed out, scanning for life signs, rushing toward the cadets with thermal blankets and emergency stimulants. M was carried aboard first, her injuries prioritized by the medical AI. The others followed, assisted by drones and emergency personnel. Elena was the last to approach the shuttle, her steps slow but steady. A galactic officer met her at the ramp, datapad in hand. His uniform bore the insignia of the Academy Research Division, and his expression was one of professional curiosity. "Cadet Navarro," he began formally. "Our sensors detected unusual combustion signatures. You initiated unregulated burning of native methane hydrate compounds? You managed sustained 20-minute burns? We have no record of such a protocol." Elena reached into her pocket and withdrew a single charred shard, the first crystal she had burned successfully. She placed it in the officer's gloved hand. "Fireglass," she said simply. The officer examined the remnant with newfound respect. "The Academy would be very interested in this discovery. Cadet Navarro. There is a position available in the Applied Survival Research Division. Your innovations could redefine training across the galaxy." Elena glanced past him to the shuttle hatch, where Verkon and the Euro twins waited, watching her. Their journey wasn't over. Medical treatment, debriefing, eventual return to their respective worlds. But something fundamental had changed. They had survived Evan's long night together, aliens and human, unified by fire and ice. "Maybe later," Elena told the officer, suddenly aware of how desperately she craved simple comfort. "Right now, I just want a hot meal." As the shuttle lifted off, Elena watched through a viewport as Kale 7's frozen surface receded into cloud and shadow. Somewhere down there, her cave remained, the site of their struggle and survival. She imagined she could see one last flicker of blue flame at the entrance, extinguished hours ago, but forever ignited in memory. Elena closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to rest. The ice had burned, the impossible had happened, and they had lived to tell the tale. In the darkness of space, the shuttle accelerated toward distant stars, carrying with it not just survivors, but pioneers. Elena's discovery would indeed change survival protocols across the galaxy. But more importantly, it had changed them. 10 alien cadets and 1 human, forged by fire and bound by the long night they had endured together. And on Kale 7, as the 500-hour night finally gave way to dawn, the ice crystals glinted in the first light, waiting for the next explorers brave enough to uncover their secrets.